I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.
There has been a greater increase in violence, I think, over the last couple of years.
If you're a recreational drug user, you're part of the problem.
It was one of the most serious investigations that I've been involved in.
The clock starts ticking.
Gangland and drug crime has been normalised, it's been glamorised.
The warning is just don't get involved. This escalates very, very quickly.
Drugs absolutely cause the ruination of families. This is about drugs, this is about money, this is about control.
That's the reality of it. And they have to be more vicious and more violent than the last.
This isn't going to go away overnight.
I'm Daddy!
Those acts of crime and violence won't be tolerated.
Put your hand behind your back! Do it now! Do it now!
We're going to help you, all right?
Sorry, it's okay.
It's okay, you're okay.
Gentlemen, Daragh,
good day to you.
Take the floor. You want to?
Well, I just need to know: am I here for my expertise in TV opinion, or because I live in the K district as the token K district member of staff?
That. Well, actually, very much for both reasons.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Am I like the token K here now? Just
the man with the
What's
word.
it really like?
Yes. Do people ask that
on the front line out in Blanchardstown, Finglas, and Cabra?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so what's it like?
It's idyllic. These are pockets, right? It gets a bad rep, the K district does, especially after this TV show, no doubt about it. All the neighbours were up in arms because we're very proud of our houses and our property and our road, and there's loads of people, really nice people. It does get a bit of a bad rep.
You get more complaints about geography, you know.
So I was going to say to you, when Sean Little was shot dead in 2019, I think it was, and there was a spate of violence. It was horrific, actually, what had happened. They were so young and all the rest of it. And he was lured basically up to a roadway in Balbriggan, and he was shot beside the car, and he'd no bulletproof vest on him, so it was clear he was lured and all the rest of it. So there was a lot of detail and stuff to talk about, and, you know, it sort of delved back into very young people working in drug gangs and the tragedy of how their lives... And this woman absolutely tormented me. I was on RTE and various things that morning, and it was really busy, and we were getting stuff up on the website and everything. And this woman had me tormented, and I eventually rang her back, and she told me that the townland that he'd been shot in wasn't actually Balbriggan, and the people in Balbriggan were really, really annoyed by hearing this, and that the townland was somewhere else. Now, usually I don't lose my cool with people. Actually, believe it or not, I don't. And I lost it with her, and I just said, do you know what? You are a very lucky person that is what you have to worry about on this day.
You have a good point there, to be honest.
You know?
Yeah,
so
I'm here to defend the K district.
Yeah, I know. So we're going to actually, having pretty much slated the Gilligan show last week, and we don't mean to turn this into a TV review show, but we are all have been on the homework of watching The Guards, which was previously called The K, I think.
Inside the K.
Inside the K. It's on Virgin Media. It is produced and directed by Shauna Keogh of Empire Elite. I know this has taken a long time to make. I think it is a phenomenal piece of television to start with. How it's made, the intimacy we have as a viewer with the guards who are we're fly on the wall with the guards while they're out on the beat, while they're actually doing their ordinary day and night's work, and the kind of situations they're coming up with. We're getting a little bit of an idea what their personalities are like. We're getting a little bit of an idea of their good days, their bad days, how they're handling everything. The filming is amazing. The access is incredible, and it is such an eye-opener to us about what the guards are actually doing out on the beat.
It really is. I mean, one of the first things you see is just the level of verbal abuse. It's quite incredible, and how difficult that must be. But it's a real departure for the guards, because they did always have sort of give media access at some stage, but it was really, really heavily stage managed, really controlled, and very kind of PR driven. But this is a totally different thing, and I think it is really an excellent program.
It's I think it's incredibly made and so thought about, and every little scene is thought of. And I imagine that to create it, there was probably tens or hundreds of hours of footage, and this is what it's been whittled down to.
They're quite clearly saying, though, this has been filmed over 3 years.
Yeah.
If you know both episodes, they've pressed that because, and you can see some of the footage it's kind of long con editing they've been doing. So they have been working on it for a long time, obviously. But I'm delighted that both of you like it, because I was watching it, and thanks for the homework on this one, by the way. The last homework was awful, if you remember. Andrew Tate podcast. Yes, you missed that, Niall.
Never.
So I enjoyed the homework this time, and I was watching it the whole time wondering, I wonder will Niall and Nicola actually like it as much as me, because I'm getting an insight into a world that is completely alien to me. You guys have some time of operating in the world of crime, and so you would have more of an idea of what cops get up to on a daily basis. So I was actually watching this going, I wonder will you guys actually find this as interesting and as brilliantly done as I did. I was sitting there watching this going, this is one of the best TV shows in years on Irish TV.
Well, it doesn't sanitize the guards either. Like, it's not that, you do obviously have a sympathy for them and it's told from their perspective, like that's natural. But it's not some sort of whitewash of the Gardaí activity either, or really.
I think that is definitely down to the producer and the director, Shauna Keogh, and how she's gone about this. And it's a really honest portrait of something. And as I say, sometimes you get an idea a little bit about the personality of some of the guards involved. Now we have Selena Proudfoot, Thelma Waters, Dwayne O'Brien, Johnny Santry, Damien Mangan, who's a D Sergeant, Siobhan Tolan, a detective, Chief Superintendent Finbar Murphy are all interviewed as well. They're talking heads on it, but they're also out in the beat, all except the Chief Super. He doesn't seem to leave the office. But the others are all out in the beat. They're in conferences, and they're also then sat in a darkened room and kind of almost asked to reflect and to observe and to tell us what is going on around all this activity that we're seeing. You can
see, because when we had some cameraman following us for the Regency trial the last couple of days.
Goodness, what's on that?
But exactly, because you can see that with them, they may probably, like anybody in those circumstances, start off being guarded.
Yeah, you start off with the PR.
Oh, no, you
but they're not. And so it does capture that. So they're obviously being followed for a hugely long period of time, because they're not. They're very honest, and you can see them.
So are not conscious of the camera.
No.
And again, for somebody to do that, for a director, for a producer to come on and to actually make the subjects comfortable enough to be dealing with, that you're not sort of watching, or you're not aware which side they're on.
I mean, and they do have, they tackled some, look, there's people are going to watch it and have a different perspective, absolutely, on the guards, and that's fair enough. But they did tackle some of the issues. Like, I thought there was a good bit in the second episode that hasn't been aired yet.
Yeah, this week.
About stop and search, where they're talking about
kids.
Yeah, and then there's also a woman being stopped in a car. So
don't be swinging.
Sorry.
So that's so that's they are tackling some of that controversy of.
But
that was a really interesting scene to leave in. I thought.
I was watching that going, of all the hours of footage they have, they actually left in. It's not a mistake, but it's just, it didn't lead to anything. And it was the cops explaining, look, we have to do this.
It's a better controversy, because that's one of the big controversies worldwide to do with police. Certainly to do with some of the issues in the US and in the UK. So it was just interesting to see it from that perspective, where they're sort of explaining why they stop random people, why they pick certain people. It was just, so what I mean is, like, it's
just what had happened, just to explain for anyone who hasn't seen it. 2 cars came up alongside one another in opposite directions, and the drivers put down their windows and chatted in the way it would happen anywhere in any community. But in this particular area, a lot of the drug dealing the guards have seen, and the kind of the organised criminals, and they're maybe having a conversation, stuff that they need to be on top of, happens in this way. So they happened upon this, and they started to ask a lady where she was going and what her business was. And she got really, really upset.
Hysterical.
And genuinely upset. I think.
Genuinely. And the
Yeah.
reason she got upset was that she was living in a community. She was working really hard to pay for everything. She was surrounded by a lot of this criminality and these people who are out drug dealing and who are, in fancy cars and maybe have, a nicer front drive than she does because it's drug money. And she was just really upset. And you could see that it was like, I'm sure it had built up in her, that she had been stopped a few times. Maybe her children had been stopped and asked what they're doing. And it builds up a resentment in the police. Then you saw how the police handled it. And the way they handled it was they got down and very gently explained to her, listen, we have to do this. We're kind of doing it. I thought they handled it well also.
Yeah, but it's the fact is that he addressed this issue, which is, are they entitled to stop? These are obviously guards on the beat, so they don't make those decisions. Politicians make those decisions and then senior gardai roll it down. But you just saw that perspective. And there was another, obviously in the second episode, it concentrates a lot on cannabis as well.
Yeah.
And people, casually using cannabis and maybe relatively small amounts of cannabis. And they tackle that head on as well, because a lot of the guards give their perspective, some of which is very much against sort of legalization or normalization of cannabis, which people have strong views. And that's, I don't personally know what is right or wrong there in terms of what way we should go. But it's just interesting to see them tackle those controversial issues.
And in their job,
in their perspective,
are there to, uphold the laws, and it's a black and white issue for them.
Yeah.
It is illegal. It is a drug that is illegal in this country. And what they're finding more and more is these young kids and even adults, in fact, in some cases, a grandfather throws a bit of green at them.
Yeah.
But they're smoking them in front of them while they're trying to talk to them about what they're doing that might be illegal. They're actually smoking drug, blowing it into their faces.
Yeah. And by not tackling it from the top with big, bringing on talking heads, professors of this, psychiatrists, this, you actually see the contradictions and the real complications of that the war on drugs on that real level where, but they're also obviously, so I thought that was really good. And obviously then they're, in the first episode, which people may have seen, it really focuses in on it's probably three real crimes, is it? There's the video of the young teenager being intimidated after being accused of making a statement, which is really, I thought, shocking.
Scary.
It really is. That's horrific.
Brings it home, doesn't it?
There's a machete attack, which is
right outside Finglas, the station, from what I remember.
Yeah. So, and that's obviously linked to
disgusting.
One of those sort of ongoing feuds. And then there's obviously the shooting of Lee Boylan, which we've written, which, obviously we had a story about it in the Sunday World ahead of it, where you see there's a guy called Alan Graham, who's serving a long prison sentence now for his role in it. He was a well-known drug dealer from Limerick. He had serious convictions for drug dealing in the past, a decade ago. He's obviously been brought in to do this shooting. And it's just amazing. You see him going and having a pint,
changing his
the
clothes,
aftermath,
and sort of high-fiving people, and he's done his job.
He's the getaway driver. He's done for kind of a complicated charge of, carrying out a shooting on behalf of a criminal gang. So that's the real. That's really dramatic because you see
amazing
that's
insight
happened.
into it.
Yeah, absolutely. They're all very likable characters in it, and they are characters. I'm talking about, Selena Proudfoot, Dwayne O'Brien, Damien Mangan. All of them are very real. And I think a lot of the guards, they tend to be sometimes very stiff in their dealings with members of the public and with anybody.
Yeah.
They're kind of like operating on an awful lot of rules. And certainly with the media, they sometimes tend to be a little bit nervous to be seen speaking to anybody from the media in case they're accused of passing on information or whatever. But you see them and they're very likable, totally human characters who are feeling sorry for the people that they're arresting.
I think they find the criminals they're being nice to them. They're giving them a chance out. They're almost getting down to their level. You can see them trying their best with them. As long as the abuse doesn't come out, and you can see then when it heats up a little bit and there's spitting or there's verbal abuse, sometimes it's physical, you can see then they rally together and it gets tough. But until then, they are trying their best. You kind of get that impression by it, and it
yeah.
doesn't look like it's a contrived PR stunt. Certainly the way
No,
it's filmed.
definitely
No,
not.
it's
And I
not.
think
And
you'd probably have to go about it that way.
Yeah,
They're constantly trying to bring the situation down a level,
Yeah.
stop everybody shouting. They're trying to, I mean, there's one scene in the second episode that they have gone to a house, and for me, there was a couple of standouts, but for me, this was one of them. And the gentleman that is they're speaking to is a grandfather,
Yeah.
and his grandkid is there, and the house is being used as a drug dealing property. And there's kids in the house, and the kids are all standing outside. The grandfather's roaring and shouting, and it's Selena Proudfoot in this case is trying to kind of just bring the situation down a level. She doesn't want, she says, the kids to remember her as being the shouty one, because she's trying to give them a good impression of the police. And they go in and they get them their coats because they're cold sitting outside. But you can only feel so sorry for the poor kids. And that's probably a normal scenario in their lives.
I think it is, and I think there's another interesting bit where there's a mother who's interacting with the guards because of her son, and I felt quite sorry for the mother because the son is obviously, I don't know if they mentioned his age, but he looks like he's a teenager, probably mid-teens, bit older. And some of the guards are saying, "Oh, the parents should be telling, keeping control of the kids." And I'm looking at thinking, what can that mother do to a child of that age? But it's even that is it's unguarded, no pun intended, where the guards are obviously saying the parents should just tell them what to do and the kids should do it. The mother saying, "What can I do? Like, I'm doing my best. I'm going to take responsibility." And it just shows you it's really, really complicated, these problems. And I think that's what I come away with. Like, it is so complicated.
So complicated. And ultimately, what you come away with as well is really what the guards are saying. And I think Thelma Waters at one point says, this has to be a multi-agency approach.
Yeah.
It's not just the guards that can go out and deal with this. They're walking away from a situation, someone's been arrested, maybe drugs have been seized, but they're leaving behind children living in a situation where their living room is being used as a crack den.
Yeah.
And it's not for the guards to take those kids out of that situation or to somehow reach into that family to try and help it.
Do you remember the scene though when they raided the house at Christmas time and they were in the operations room beforehand? They got some intel about what was going on. They had identified the 3 different drugs that were either being prepared or sold from the house. I can't remember. And they said, we're bringing a fire extinguisher because the history of this house being raided is that they just chuck everything on the fire, and the fire was running in the house 24/7, 365 days a year for that purpose.
And I thought it was really interesting that I think they said it in both episodes about family gangs. Now, this is not the Kinahans in Dubai. These are really street level drugs gangs, and how it's run as a family organization. And if you look back to even
normalized for the child,
it's normalized, and they can rely on each other. They're not going to inform on their own family. They're not going to give evidence against their own family. And that's really how that street level drug dealing is able to operate. You have families, and it goes through generations, grandfathers, fathers, and then sons, all involved in the business. They speak about some women being involved in the business as well. And that's, if you look at that was magnified even with the Byrne organised crime group, where you had, the Byrnes, the cousins, Fat Freddie Thompson, other cousins, all the way down. And you just see that how difficult that is to police, because how are they going to police a family? If
totally.
You know what I mean?
And a lot of the focus on the second episode is about grooming, and the people, the cops on the beat can see these kids, see how they're being used by the drug gangs, see how they're being lured into it. And I think it is Detective Sergeant Damien Mangan describes it as the lure of the street. Kind of no matter what they do or say, there's always that lure of the street for these kids. Detective Siobhan Tolan handles the situation, which I'm sure is a very regular one as well, where an individual, they're called out to this house and the guy is on something that is clearly
breathing very heavily.
He's breathing very heavily, but I think
agitated.
the fear sort of them and her, she's trying to talk him down or certainly get him as far as the police station.
Yeah.
She handled it so well, but this guy has taken something, and I would imagine they're very afraid that he's going to get really violent. He obviously can go any which way. And a lot of these sort of new drugs, they don't really know what they are. They're having that kind of effect on people, on drug users and on poly drug users who'll take anything they can get their hands on. And she describes and talks about, you know, sort of as she's reflective on the situation. The situation is filmed and they're not that aware there's a camera there, I don't think. But she reflects on it afterwards and she says, you see the manpower it takes.
Yeah, there were so many involved.
There were
in that.
and of course there were so many involved.
he was
Because
a big,
obviously
big
this
guy.
was a big danger that somebody was going to get injured here. And this is a guy who's just taken drugs in his house.
Yeah.
It turned really quickly, that scenario. Sorry, Noel.
Yeah.
I thought it was under complete control at first, and I thought she was doing brilliantly. And then he's kind of circled by about, it must be 8 cops at that stage. And I remember thinking the first time I saw it, going, that's a little bit heavy-handed. I don't think they need that. And I was thinking to myself about Garda resources, and look at this is taking way too many. But then, and he was asking for prayers, do you remember, for his mum who had passed away and everything. And they were saying, we'll go back to the station, we'll pray. She was saying all the right things and kept him calm. But he then flipped, and that's what the drugs did. And they knew they could obviously sense that was coming. They've done this.
Or it's happened before.
Yeah, I'm watching this kind of going, there's way too many there. And it's not a chicken and egg. It didn't instigate this fit by him. They knew it was coming. And it was so difficult for them to get him in the van then afterwards. You could see why they rolled up so many police for that situation. But what I was amazed with is how quickly it went from what seemed like...
It'd be the worst in the world if your man damaged himself in any way or hurt himself as well. You can be guaranteed while he's under arrest or being taken in by them. I mean, that's the other problem. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like they're working under this situation where everyone's gone PC mad and they're looking for too much, I think, out of them in a way. I mean, how difficult is it to go out and about and do your business under those circumstances with people roaring and shouting at you, calling you names, keep your cool while you're being videoed by every goddamn person with a mobile phone who's nothing else to do?
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I do feel sympathy for them. However, you can go back in the good old days as well and see that guards used to go in and didn't cover themselves in glory in these situations.
Well, I mean, that's an extreme, but I mean, I do think that they're operating under everything has to be signed, sealed, delivered. There's too much bureaucratic tape now at this stage. You see the kind of situations they're trying to deal with, and to be in your head 75 million rules in case you know, I was
talking to one of the coaches down in the GA club last night because he's a cop, and I just said, "Did you watch the first episode?" He hadn't seen the second, obviously, and he says, "Yeah, I kind of skimmed through it, but it's cherry picking moments in a working day. Everything else obviously wouldn't make great TV, but it's now got to the situation where every interaction with a member of the public has to be registered. It's not what we would know as paperwork traditionally. It's not on paper. It's all computerized, obviously. But every interaction has to be logged on the system. So that's a lot of your job now.
Quite a lot on.
And if you're high up, you have your 10 people in your. This is what he says. You've got 10 people in your team, and each of those 10 people has 10 incidents. That's 100 incidents that this boss has to regulate and make sure it's logged in the system. Any interaction.
I just think that's ridiculous.
Well, we have and this is the real source of frustration from guards that are working at the street level there, and I think as well that's a cultural thing within the policing, and what it probably stops is what you see, the human side of how guards interact with the people on the streets there, and that's probably the best policing that you see there is where they take a human approach and are able to use their own intuition and their own knowledge, so that bureaucracy stops that. Now, there's obviously a reason why bureaucracy has sprung up in police forces as well, and you can't ignore that. I mean, the other thing that really stood out to me was there is huge money there, isn't there, for
criminals?
Even at that level, there's big wads of cash going on.
Yeah.
And I mean...
somebody said, I've only my few bob. What have you got? Do you want to give it up to us for research? It was 7,000 or something.
Yeah.
A few bob.
So you can...
There was a time that would have been like maybe a few tenors in a biscuit tin for some woman in a house.
Yeah, so that is, you can see that's a big attraction. I mean, these aren't people living in leafy suburbs, and to have, young lads being able to go around with access to that money, you can see the attraction. And the other thing I thought that was quite stark in the first episode, I think, is where they're talking about the availability of handguns. Obviously, like Finglas has been the scene of a lot of shootings in recent times, but what they're saying is these guns are just available they're just available to everybody who can pay for them.
Yeah.
And I think that is
and they're
a huge
400
problem.
quid.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
they're cheap.
There's one gun that keeps getting produced, the pistol, the old school pistol.
Yeah.
I've seen that it looks like it should be in Bridgerton or something like that. But obviously, someone has used it at some point. They just as you say, get their hands on anything they can.
And that wasn't always the way in Ireland.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't always the way in Dublin. When, particularly during the Troubles, there weren't guns floating around. I mean, obviously
so much more stuff coming in. You see that there's so many more opportunities. I mean, we know from back, quite a bit back, that the guns were coming in on the top of the drugs.
Yeah.
The cherry on the pie, they were called. And I mean, there's so much more drugs being imported into this country. There's so many more people putting their hand in their pocket at the weekends and buying cocaine.
Yeah.
Because they're on a night out.
Yeah.
And that's what's funding all this that we're looking at. It's this incredible cycle that seems to me almost like this blindness that we're going into this climate change and the whole problem with that. It's exactly the same thing. We're just doing, we're just greedy for more and more drugs.
Yeah.
And this is making, would you call the people living in these communities greedy for it? They're wearing snazzy runners. They're not really bettering themselves in any way. A lot of these kids that they show, and again, the filming is so beautifully done in this gritty fashion. They will often just, in a scenario when they obviously can't show the faces of the kids, they'll home in on the runners. And you see the Hugo Boss, you see those Nike
Yeezys
Pros, whatever you call those Air Max things that are, over 200 quid. Kids that don't have a job, that don't have anything, and they are wearing gear that is, but anyway, greed is just funding all this, but it's middle class society that doesn't have to live in these areas that is ultimately funding it. Because you can go out for your weekend, buy your bag of Coke, have a great night out, and close the door in your leafy suburb, and you don't have to deal with that outside your door. When you look at some of the footage in this program, The Guards, it's quite sinister. It's dark at night, and there's young boys on bicycles circling around situations, and they're there in the shadows, and you've no idea, do they have a gun? Are they off their head on drugs? Are they going to use that? Are they going to point it at me? They have no absolutely regard for life. They're at that age that they're being used and abused by drug gangs. They're feeling powerful. They're feeling they're part of something. I mean, it is really sinister. I would absolutely hate to be bringing a family up around that.
I think it is sinister. I mean, obviously, it's the broader political culture we live in creates that alienation as well. Like it's not just the middle class drug users. These people, some of these have been forgotten about for generations, and then kids grow up alienated totally from society, and of course they adopt. They end up adopting these values because that's the values they're presented with. So there's no...
And a lot of addiction issues. And we do know that there is a huge problem in this country with addiction. And like when you look at a scene where there's a woman being arrested, I don't know exactly the context of it, but she's foul-mouthed.
Yeah.
And she is upended on the bonnet of a car.
Oh yeah, the English lady.
And
she was English. She was kind of there. Someone was joking.
Her a lady, Daragh.
Woman. Lady?
No, a lady.
That's as far as I can... Well, I don't know what she identifies as.
She was absolutely foul-mouthed.
Yeah, it was like an EastEnders episode. They were joking.
It was absolutely like... So, again, I'm not 100% sure I caught the context of that. But there's a lot of people out in the street watching this.
I think Mangan was the talking head, and he was talking about it, how they don't know what all the drugs are at this point.
Yeah.
And they're just willing to take whatever they can.
But this is a woman of a certain age within a community being dragged onto the bonnet of a Garda car, spitting in the faces, calling them C words, everything. Mm-hmm. And the kids are stopping their play to watch this. Yeah. And I mean, this is an older person that... They probably don't look up to her, kid, but at the same time, it's a kind of a parental figure in their community. I mean,
this is what they're aspiring to. Like, I mean, this is the parental guidance that they see. The grown-ups in their community, and this isn't a tearaway teen. This isn't a 20-something drug addict who's fallen off.
Frightening. I mean, she is absolutely frightening.
And they're just, the cops were taking such abuse in that scenario. There was another one as well. I think I think Dwayne is his name. He was being hurt.
That's Dwayne O'Brien.
Yeah, there was one scene where he was putting someone in the back of a van. It might have been her actually, and the abuse that was being hurled at him. I don't know how he doesn't say something back.
It was her, and she spat at him, and then she spat at the window just as her final.
They just the level of patience that these cops have to have.
I'm sure they lose their patience often.
Maybe they do. Like, I mean, I don't know.
You wouldn't be human if you could go out into those situations, be spat at, and roared at, and called every name. And then, of course, you also have to deal with probably the likelihood that she went through the revolving door and went in and straight back out and was right back doing the exact same thing the next day.
Quite possibly.
You know, so it's
they do actually. That was mentioned in episode 2. They kind of refer a few times to knowing the people, the individuals, and I stopped that guy because 3 days ago I found a joint on him, and a few weeks ago we found him with something else. So they do get to know the personalities. So, like, I mean, I'm sure, as you say, it's just a revolving door for a lot of these individuals.
I mean, some of these people are unwell as well. Like, that's discussed mental health and addiction issues. But, like, what do we do? Like, this isn't the responsibility of the guards to get people treatment or into recovery or whatever it is. But the state doesn't help, doesn't make the resources available for these people that are unwell either, you know what I mean? So, like, and the
services are all working independently, I think, is what was being translated. Like, should there be, should the services all be going into the same place at the same time and identifying the various health problems?
What resources do we have to tackle addiction in this country? Like, very, very little. It's mostly done by charity.
Some of the resources, like in particular the HSE and TUSLA and all, you know what I mean? Some of the resources that are there, a lot of people would say they're not being well used and they're not,
Oh, I don't doubt that, but I mean, do we do enough for people that are in these conditions? And I mean, what's our responsibility as a country towards the kids growing up there, as we talk about? If we don't give people a chance to get out and get well, we certainly shouldn't be looking down on those communities. There's just no way,
But, like, who deserves the chance within it all? The kind of repeat constant offender, the person screaming and shouting in the face of the guards, or the poor kids standing by?
Well, it's the kids that deserve the chance.
Exactly.
For sure. And
they're the ones that deserve the chance.
What about the kids that have parents that are repeat offenders? They still deserve a chance. I'm not saying there's no easy answer. Like, absolutely.
Oh yeah, they do. But I mean, where are the guards? Or every scenario the guards are called out to and are going into, they're seeing problems are issues that they can deal with because they're there to uphold the law. Yeah. But they're also seeing other issues that they have to come away from that situation and leave behind them because the social workers aren't coming with them, the healthcare workers aren't coming with them. And there's people working in community services that would very much sort of, champion the idea of all these services working together.
Exactly.
When you have a situation that somebody has been shot or injured or maybe beaten up by a drug gang, you need the healthcare workers there at the bedside at that point when they're at their probably weakest and maybe at their most open.
Remember at the heart of all of this, like TUSLA, from their own words, are facing an absolute crisis, is what they are saying themselves. A chronic shortage of social workers, chronic lack of ability to intervene for children in emergency circumstances. This is said by themselves, acknowledged by the government. So, I mean, I don't think you can. I know we're probably going off our TV review, but
because I was actually going to say, wouldn't it be wonderful if they would actually let somebody like Sean Keogh, the producer and director, go in and do the work she does within their services so we could actually see. Instead, they are a very closed off agency. Yeah. Yourself and Eamon were talking about them recently and how they won't even answer your comment and actually have a very healthy legal department, which seems to be very overworked with sending out legal gagging letters to media or anybody who asks questions of them.
Exactly. And I mean, look, I think in a funny way, like, I think anybody watching the program, The Guards, would show you the benefits of not having that type of policy, because there's nobody could come away from that program not thinking, better of the guards than when they went in.
And gaining a proper understanding.
And the reason why, because you see them acting as people, unguarded. They're saying stuff. I remember hearing one of the guards, I can't remember who it was, saying something about the parents, thinking, oh God, she probably gets a little like we do when somebody points out something you say in the podcast, thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
But, but it's those moments where you see the human side that give you a better perspective than than the old, what was it, the old Garda program going on about vehicles.
Oh, Garda Patrol or whatever you called it.
Yeah.
Do you think this would do more for Garda recruitment? Or do you think it would put people off, though, when you see how gritty it is?
Well, I tell you, I wouldn't like being shouted. Don't know if I could hold being shouted at like that.
You'd
and I
be
take your
good
point.
at it, actually. But I have somebody younger, close to me, who wants to go into the Guards, and I know that it would only encourage them more because... And I know they'd be very good at those kind of situations and scenarios. And I actually said to them, you should watch this because it'll give you an actual proper understanding of what it is if you're really interested in going into it. And I think that you have to be up for it. You have to be able for a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I don't think you can choose a career like the Guards or probably like crime journalism if you're going to get easily offended, if you're going to be off getting counselling if somebody emails you something nasty. Do you know what I mean? I seriously do think I think there's some qualities you need to have to probably make you a good guard. And maybe recognising that before you go into the career or whatever. And look, it's such a vast organisation. There's good and bad, and there's people able, and there's all sorts of different roles you can take in it. Not everyone has to go out into
desk jobs and on the beach.
But yeah, I think you have to have a kind of a mixture of enjoying those adrenaline moments and also the ability to sort of set it aside and not let it.
And I think probably what makes a good guard and what you see on the programme is a decency and a bit of decency.
Bit of empathy.
A bit of decency and kind of just a little bit of ability to see things from the wider perspective, that it's not just all black and white.
Yeah.
It is the role they're providing when it comes to what's legal and what's not. But how they handle people, I think, is important. So
one of the things about this, though, before we get, they have a good mix of personalities on the Guard side as well. I think, they have is it Thelma? Very unnassuming and softly spoken, but you know she'd probably kick some ass.
Oh,
as well.
God!
And then you've got Selena.
Very strict. There's
Selena, whatever she's selling on buying, she is just a brilliant person.
She's kind of the social media superstar.
She's become a bit like that, and Dwayne as well, and obviously Johnny was there in the first season, and he's a little bit there now. There's Santry, they've some good personalities there. They've been clever with who they've chosen. There's a good mix there, and all of this team clearly love what they do. They're invested in it. They find the human inside to these individuals that we probably write off as just black and white, as you say. They're a criminal or not. These guys are getting down, getting dirty, and getting into these personalities and trying to help them. You genuinely want them to succeed. You want to see them doing well and getting the arrest or talking down the situation. And it's a complete, just from a TV perspective, it was just so alien to me to see this side of that job. Any cops I know who are just acquaintances, I had no idea what they do on a day-to-day basis. And
James Leonard, who's one half of the Two Norries podcast, a guy who was headed down a path in life of addiction, and all I'd say of his crime was addicted related. He was in and out of prison all his life. He was really on the scrap heap. And it was the interaction, and he always cites it, of a Garda who was kind to him one day when he was at his lowest ebb, that changed his life and has put him on a course of, both of them are just such amazing people who are trying to reach back and give a hand up to those coming behind them into recovery and into sort of an understanding of the good life as opposed to what was their bad times. But it just always think it's interesting to see the difference it can make sometimes just to speak to somebody in a nice way and be human with them. And, maybe with the Guards, they are still ultimately being the ones who are sending them towards prison. But if they are just nice, the difference that they can make to somebody's life, and that's what they show. I certainly can't speak highly enough for this piece of television. I think it's incredible, and I hope the people who got involved in it, all those people whose personalities we're getting to know a little bit, feel they got something out of it too. Because sometimes when the media or when television does something right, it is it can make change, I think. And it can change our perspective on things and what we're...
Yeah.
And ultimately that's...
it's the kind of the antidote to the Twitter phenomenon of the simple answers, isn't it? Where somebody tweets, we should do this about crime, or we should do
We
that
should just
about
legalize drugs.
or we should lock everybody up,
Yeah.
So it's just the antidote of this. It really shows you what the real world is like and how complicated these problems are, and for everybody involved. I think it is really good. Better than John Gilligan.
I was going to say, did you watch John Gilligan Ep 2?
No, you put me off, to be honest.
Sorry,
Yeah,
you didn't. You?
Well, I haven't watched it yet. No, I mean, I will watch it.
Yeah.
I will watch it.
Like, to compare and contrast.
Yeah.
As two pieces of television, as coming at
same
it.
channel at the same time. It
is left and right. It is black. I mean, there is just such a difference between these two pieces of television.
I think the guards as well. Like, it's very much part of the sort of, like, everybody's how people watch television's really changed over the last few years through streaming, really, and that kind of fly on the wall style of where they really try and get under, really try and get the personality out. Like, we're really used to that from Netflix and other series, and I think the guards is really in that vein. I think the John Gilligan is really the sort of thing before that, isn't it? In terms of style wise,
You think it's old fashioned style wise?
well, it's a bit more old fashioned, is it?
well, the motive is probably
I
just to
think
get
that
his
there
story.
was a lack of courage in how to do it in a way.
Yeah.
I think that there was a preempted belief that this was going to cause huge controversy, and that there was going to be criticism that they were giving this guy a platform. And yes, it did all that anyway, even though they wrapped it up as something slightly different than it could have been. I think it drags on. I've actually spoken to somebody earlier who's watched Ep 2, and they feel, I felt in the first episode that they were sort of trying to make 3 out of what should have been 1 anyway. So the second one is, like, I mean, where are we going with 3 hours of it? 3 hours of it.
Well, I'll watch it, and many people will as well. So I suppose that's not to be sniffed at.
Just before we finish, Jimmy Gearan has come out again today, and he's written to members of the Oireachtas asking them to support calls for Virgin Media to reconsider its decision to air this 3-part series.
Okay.
Now, I don't think that politicians should be telling any television station what to air and what not. And Jimmy Gearan should probably be looking for support in the criticism of it.
Yeah.
But to actually say pull it, I don't think.
No, I mean, I think it is journalistically defendable, and the idea that it should be pulled, obviously the programs have to go out that are deeply upsetting to people, but you can understand from his perspective that he's trying to maybe he views this as a way in which to keep it in the news and maybe put a bit of pressure on. But no, it's not a problem.
Well, no, what he says is that the series has been most upsetting for his family, and he warns the show has given Gilligan a chance to peddle his lies and tarnish Veronica's reputation and legacy. I believe it's wrong to be broadcasting the programme and to be giving the likes of a John Gilligan, a hardened criminal, a platform to peddle lies. And he said his family always knew Gilligan was likely to make statements and tell lies, but they never thought he'd be given the chance to speak on national television. But he has been. So, and it's been made and it's already been broadcast in its beginning. I would agree with his sentiments there that I never thought that Gilligan would be given a programme to air what he has to say. But then
I think in Virgin Media,
he's been given
platforms
before. So
I think in Virgin Media's defence, it's not presented in that way that this is John Gilligan telling the truth of stuff. It is presented in a different way that here's John Gilligan telling.
Was there a right way to do this, John Gilligan?
No, I don't think I don't think there is. It's
we spoke the last time we were discussing it about the kind of the Louis Theroux style, which is obviously Louis Theroux's style and is like so
better.
But it is he is top of his game.
Yeah.
So is it possible to recreate that? I think personally, the producers of that program could have had a better go at what they did. I don't think putting those other voices around Gilligan's worked in the way they hoped it would to sort of sanitize what he was saying.
Well, maybe I do think it does to an extent sanitize what he, to an extent it does put a context on it that isn't this is something that should be taken at face value in what he says. I don't know if it works as a piece of television as a result, but I do think on a journalistic level, they do make it clear that he isn't to be taken at his word, and that he's not somebody that's a reliable witness
what about
to his
the
own
book?
Events. I haven't investigated it
I've
yet.
shown it to you.
Yeah.
The book is basically, which it was sent into me in the office here, obviously for review. The book is published by Merrion Press, Gilligan's Confession Tapes or something it's called, and big picture John Gilligan on the front of it. And when you open the book, it is the Jason O'Toole question is in bold, and then John Gilligan's answers.
Transcript.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, there is a bit of context, I think, around some of the chapters, the beginning of the chapters where they're at, and also the previous communication between the author and Gilligan. But that's how the book has been presented, which in a way...
Well, that really is in his own words.
That really is in his own words. So
it's not journalism, though, really. It's just printing off the transcript.
Well, I mean, Jason O'Toole will say it's journalism. There was 35 hours of interviews with John Gilligan. Can you imagine listening to 35 hours of John Gilligan? I mean, I would actually take Jonathan Dowd all over that. Would you?
Well,
just say you're given a choice. This is like something the kids say. Just say you've got a choice: Jonathan Dowdall or John Gilligan.
Well, definitely Jonathan Dowdall is more entertaining.
Yeah, that's it. So that's 100% of people say Jonathan Dowdall of my survey.
Our survey says.
So yeah, look, it's been bizarre, the Gilligan stuff, and we'll see where it goes. You know, there's another 2 episodes. We've only really sort of seen the teaser nearly with the first.
I don't think coming out to say pull it is actually a clever idea, though. It's actually giving it more headlines. He kind of just, could have possibly just, I think he's stayed quiet and just let it.
I think Jimmy Gearon is trying to make a point, though, and that's like, as a grieving family, he's absolutely.
I think so, exactly.
To make his point, you know, look, people will watch it, and maybe they watch the cards and make their own decision.
Well, if anybody takes my advice, Niall's advice, Darragh's advice, watch the guards.
The K District isn't all that bad.
Yeah, the K District is great.
No,
massive.
I love
part
it.
of our city.
I'm there for life.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.